Welcome to video 7 of disaster proofing your biz. And today we are going to continue step 4, which is finding solutions to your potential problems. And today's problem that we're going to address is loss of supplier or vendor or contractor. So must, before we even get into the solutions, I think I might only have one on this one actually, but doesn't matter. Before we get into it, a must is to connect with your clients. If you have or anticipate losing a supplier, a vendor, or a contractor, that means you have decreased your ability to serve your clients. All right, and before that becomes a problem, meaning before your client doesn't receive the product or service that they're supposed to by the date they were supposed to, tell them, okay? Talk to them, have a conversation with them. Customers need to be made aware of any issues that may happen with their delivery of the delivery of your product or service before it happens. Okay, they also want to know what contingency plans you have in place to help them get their product on or service. So you have to serve the client, you guys, the clients that are still willing and ready to work with you. All right, and part of serving them means telling them we might have a problem. Okay, and as hard as that is to say, because how many of us have been here before, right? We see that we might have a problem getting our product or service out on time, but we tell ourselves we're going to solve it and we're gonna figure it out before the client even knows it's late. We're gonna figure it out, right? And in the past, that might have worked, but there's no guarantee. There's so many variables right now that we don't want to chance it. All right, and right now especially, people are going to be so much more appreciative of your honesty and your upfront and your being forward with them than they are feeling like you're hiding from them. All right, and part of it is that they're going to expect it, you guys. In this environment right now, I doubt any of your clients are going to be surprised if you tell them that you're experiencing difficulties, you're experiencing things you've never had to deal with before, and therefore you're experiencing some delays. All right, you may lose some clients based on this upfront, this upfront openness, but I don't think you're going to, and you are going to earn the trust and the like and the, you're going to, and the appreciation of so many more of your clients than there are going to be angry ones. Does that make sense? Okay, so you got to connect with your clients. And that also goes for your vendors. Okay, you have to connect with your vendors and have an honest conversation with them. Ask them, are they being affected by this? Do they anticipate being affected by this? How do they anticipate being affected by this? And you might be able to help them and help each other figure this out together. All right, so the solution here is, it's basically a step-by-step process. There's one solution for you guys here. So if you anticipate a loss of a supplier, vendor, or contractor, okay, we're going to talk about suppliers right now. We'll talk about vendors and contractors kind of, but suppliers, right? And the reason we want to talk about suppliers a little more specifically is because it's a little more in depth, and you'll understand what I'm saying in a minute. So the solution we're presenting here is to determine whether your current supply chain is or will be affected. All right. So before we can fix it, we got to figure out how it's going to be affected. All right. And in the previous steps, we determined what happens if one of our suppliers disappears or, stops providing us with, supplies or materials. But this is taking it a step further. So step 1, I want you to map your supply chain several tiers back. I don't only want to know that you get your t-shirts from John's t-shirt shop on the other side of town. Okay, I also want to know where John's t-shirt shop gets their t-shirts, and where that distributor or supplier gets their t-shirts. Okay, I want you to trace your supply chain as far back as you can. All right, if we go back to 2011, when there were earthquakes in Japan, and it took weeks for so many companies around the world to understand their exposure to this disaster, because they didn't realize that upstream on their supply chain, there were distributors or there were suppliers from Japan. All right. So, and by the time they realized it, it's too late to fix it. Right? So step one is map your supply chain several tiers back. Doing so, you guys, will also allow you, and I encourage this as well, to develop relationships with different parts of your supply chain, and if possible, in advance. That way, again, once the disruption has happened, it's too late to start making friends. All right, if you build the relationships in advance, then they're gonna come to you and tell you when there's problems and help you sort through them, okay? Again, a little late for this coronavirus nonsense that's going on, but going forward, so map your supply chain and develop relationships. Step two, determine what effects the various parts of the supply chain are experiencing or plan to experience from this pandemic. Biggest red flag that so many people see is that they find, so they're looking at this and they're like, you know what, I have a supplier, I have a backup supplier, let's say I have Joe's shirt shop that does my t-shirts, but then I have Wally's water bottles who give me my water bottles, but they also have suppliers for the other thing, like Joe's t-shirts also has water bottles, and Wally's water bottles also has t-shirts. So if something ever happens to one, I can go to the other one, to help me out. I'm good, right? But once you map your supply chains, you might find that both Wally and Joe get all of their t-shirts from Sam's supply shop. All right. And so when there's a single facility that all your suppliers eventually, feed up to, and that's where they get them all, that's a red flag. Okay. We might have a problem there. So that's step two, is determine determine where that goes, and then determine what effects maybe they're having upstream. Okay. So as you're mapping it out, if you find that there are common suppliers upstream, up the map, figure out what they're experiencing, figure out how this pandemic is affecting them. All right. And then step three is to redesign your supply chain. All right. I suggest seeking second sources for your supplies and starting to use them now. And as you do that, make sure that when you map the supply chain, that when you map theirs, it goes somewhere else. It's rooted that to some other supplier, not, what do we call him? Not Sam's Supplies. So that if Sam's Supplies disappears, we have another supplier that can help us. All right. And another thing I'm seeing a lot of people doing on, that I see on social media, is seeking local sources. I love this because not only are you supporting local, which I'm always a fan of, but again, you're spreading the risk simply by getting new suppliers. All right. But again, you always want to map your supply chain up. So that is the solution to loss of supplier. Loss of vendor and contractor, a little easier. You can skip most of those steps and basically just go to find other vendors or contractors that can do the things you need done. All right, you don't necessarily have to go with these people right now, but knowing that they're available, that they're competent and able to do what you need them to do, and that they're there, and just having that there. Does that make sense? As a backup. That said, a lot of people are right. So if you're using contractors, you may start using the second contractor that you just found for some small projects, so you can start vetting them, make sure they're good, make sure they know what they're doing, make sure they complete the work the same way you want it to, and make sure they're, you kind of train them the way you need things to be done, right? So you have your big, your main vendor contractor, and then you have this secondary guy that just does a project or two here. But that way, if this guy ever disappears, this guy can take on more capacity. Cool? All right, we'll see you in the next video.